and welcome to our next episode of Minerva PLM TV. I'm Jennifer Moore, your host, and I have here with me today John Stark, Product Lifecycle Management Educator, Consultant, and Author. John, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me, Jennifer. Thank you for inviting me to your book club, and thank you for inviting me to meet all of your members.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you also for writing Products 2019. I'm not going to say the whole title because it's probably the longest book title of any book I've ever read, but it is all very relevant. And of course, you've also written like 20 other books on product lifecycle management. So incredible feat. But really quickly, before we jump into the book club discussion, because there was a lot that we discussed about your book, what was it that prompted you to kind of go outside the norm and write Products 2019, this novel style approach to product lifecycle management, education, and learning versus the traditional textbook?
In the past, as you say, I've written many textbook style books, and the reaction to them is often what I heard from some of your book club members.
This novel form was actually very enjoyable to me, at least, because I think it's the first book on PLM that I've actually read from end to end without falling asleep.
I have started on other PLM books. Completed them is another matter.
Now and again, people contact me about the textbooks, and they have said in the past, why don't you try and write some kind of book with a story about it, you know, that has PLM and it has some kind of a story to it, you know, so that we could read that and we wouldn't fall asleep.
That's great. And I think it's really awesome that you took the time in lockdown to do something so different and unique. And to be quite honest, it is the first product lifecycle management book that I've ever finished beginning to end. So yeah, excellent job. Well done. So of course, like you mentioned already, because it was a novel style approach, I was able to recruit some others into joining me in a book club where we all read the book together and then got together in an old school book club style fashion, except for virtually, of course, since we're all still experiencing the lockdowns in various areas, and just kind of talked about it and asked, you know, traditional book style club questions where, you know, it's like, have you read anything else by this author? You know, what did you think of the format? And then, you know, got into the more meatier discussions about favorite takeaways and all of that other kind of stuff. And of course, that session is available on YouTube.
And I must say, your members, you know, they are wonderful people in your book club. You know, they're very positive and forward looking and very courageous as well. I think, you know, to read a book of that length, but I think they did an excellent job.
Excellent.
And I really enjoyed all of their feedback, you know, the positive and also some of the issues that they raised.
Excellent. What was your favorite takeaway that comes to mind?
Well, one thing that surprised me was that they are also positive.
Okay.
Because some of the initial feedback that I got to the book wasn't so positive. And some of these issues were brought up by some of your members. And one of them is the structure, to start with, the fact that it is a novel. There are a lot of people I found who really don't like that. They think that if you write a book about a subject that has something to do with business or science, you know, then it has to be a textbook, it has to be a reference book, and it has to follow a certain structure. You know, you start off in the first chapter and you say, you know, more or less what the book is about. And then you have special chapters coming after that, and each chapter has a title and it looks at something within the subject. And then you have a chapter from a CEO who comes along and says, you know, what a wonderful job, you know, the author did, and this was the right methodology. And then you have some customers who come along and say everything is wonderful. And somehow people have this picture in their mind, I think, that is what a business book has to look like, or a textbook. Mm-hmm. So when people with that picture in their mind saw this book, you know, they hated it because it starts off, you know, Jane is waiting for a telephone call to Germany. and that's not what they're used to. And I think a lot of people, although they talk a lot about being innovative and be open to change, they're not really all that innovative, and they're not open to change themselves. They want to see exactly the same thing they've seen before, in the structure of a book. So it was interesting for me to hear from your book club members, that the novel format was acceptable to them.
Excellent. And I'm really glad to hear that, because quite honestly, if you look at the educational environment at large, not everybody learns in the same way, and having these very academic structures and, it must be this way formats, I think can sometimes be a barrier to really learning, and obviously completely lacks those real world experiences like Jane waiting for that phone call. So I think it actually broadens the opportunity to learn and really gives some insight into what you're going to experience when you get into the job force, because you're not going to be following an academic textbook in any sense of the word. Your
right.
day-to-day job.
Yep.
So interesting.
But one thing I've found, and I've worked with lots of companies over the years, I've actually worked with more than 100 companies in all sorts of product sectors. So everything from food and beverages to aircraft and rockets and everything in between. And I'd say all of those companies, although they would all claim, to be market leaders and very forward looking, that's actually not the case. When you go in those companies, perhaps there's 1%, of the company that is forward looking, and the other 99% somehow have been left behind. And I think Products 2019 is of interest, for the vast majority of people in these companies, to know where they are today, because they don't know where they are today. They don't have the opportunity to go and see, well, how in our company, do we really go about coming up with new pharmaceutical drugs? Or how do we go about phasing out electronic components or recycling our machine tool? Most people in the company, they don't see that.
The complexity of how many things does the department need to go through to be able to operate? Systems, procedures, documents, different ways of working. One product manager does it off the top of his head, the other one using artificial intelligence. And then how busy they are, and then how they constantly just blame someone else for being behind. And it just really gave me the understanding why people within different departments wouldn't want to collaborate, or why they just focusing on what they're doing simply because they're just too busy. So that was quite eye-opening, because I knew the fact that it's complicated, but I never thought that it's that complex.
And I think it is often like that. The people are doing their daily work and they're not thinking about digitalization and digital transformation, for the vast majority. The vast majority is just hopeful, that they'll still be working for the company the next day, that they do their work well, and, that they have a career looking forward.
That makes a lot of sense to me too, from that human perspective. How much do people really care about bringing change to the organization if it doesn't in somehow or some way directly impact their ability to continue to do a good job and bring value to the company? So really good points. Mm-hmm. So these experiences that Jane goes through in the different cultures that she's experiencing and whatnot, there was a lot of feedback in the book club about how much everybody enjoyed those different elements and how it really made it, more personal. Did you actually eat chicken and waffles in Atlanta? Is that the inspiration behind the book?
Well, everything that happens in the book has really happened, so it is a 100% true story.
Fabulous.
And people have said to me, like you, I think that's the third or fourth time you've mentioned chicken and waffles. but other people do the same thing to me. They say, oh, when I was in Munich, we had to go and eat this kind of, pork food in the restaurant.
Yes.
Or when I was in North Germany, I took that flight from Berlin to Detroit, for example. Mm-hmm. And lots of people have come along and said, yes, I actually did that. And they even go far sometimes as to say, well, do you know such and such a person? you know, because if you've written these things, you must know them.
Yes. That's fantastic. I love it. And you're right, because same thing, while I was in different parts of Germany, each place that I would go, they would say, oh, while you're here, you have to eat the white sausage. While you're here, you have to have this kind of beer, you know?
Yep.
So very, very relatable.
Because another thing that was difficult for me to start with was how to make a story compared to the textbooks. Because, you know, the way the textbooks are fairly easy, you know, you can pick on a subject and you write everything you know about product data or about business processes and put them into separate chapters. And this one, you know, had to have this flow going along of the story. And the story, I don't know how it came to my mind, but the story is Jane is doing the research project for her MBA. And then I thought, well, I'd try and make it as realistic as possible. You know, that she has to find the company, you know, and then the university doesn't pay her. So she gets a little bit of money from the company, but not very much. And they don't send her to a good hotel. You know, they send her to the local guest house. And,
Yes.
and then all these little details like, you know, every morning she goes down for breakfast some of your members were saying that that was very repetitious.
The descriptions of what she had for breakfast, description of the morning chat with Frau Adler.
I was like, I don't want to read that she's drinking coffee or that she prefers apple juice. I don't care. Get to the good stuff.
But in a way, it is repetitious as well. You know, I can imagine if she was doing that, you know, it would be a bit like Groundhog Day. You know, every morning she goes down to breakfast and it's exactly the same breakfast and exactly the same people there. And then she goes off and she meets the same man at the gate and shows him her badge. And I thought the repetition somehow was important, although I can understand that, you know, people don't want to keep reading it all the time. But after a while, I think you get to know that you don't have to read. You know, you don't have to read what she eats for breakfast. You don't have to read what she says, you know, when she goes to each interview. But in reality, she has to say it, you know, because she's meeting a new person. She has to explain, you know, who she's working for, why she's doing it, what she wants to find out. And then she gets the answer to her question.
Most of the time.
I can see you read it very well, in detail.
Her hit rate was pretty good, though, I must admit.
But the other one that I was really listening for was what they didn't like about him. And several of them said, you know, that they're very visual people and they would have liked to have some diagrams.
When you have a book where you have all of these, where you describe that sketches are made and drawings are made, it's like, oh, I would wish that I had those in the book.
Absolutely agree with you.
Because I'm very visual orientated.
Yes.
So it was like, oh, it would have been so awesome to actually have just a few sketches there along the way, because I was like trying to picture it in my mind, like, oh, it goes up there and arrows up, and yes.
Like Lord of the Rings, where are we right now? Okay, I just need to go back and look at the map and then I understand. So I think, at least for me, that would have been a nice addition to have that in there as well.
I wanted the reader to, you know, really have the experience of being Jane, doing the project, you know, and she starts off, and I think Professor Bender has said something to her about how a product goes, you know, from its beginning to its end, and he cites some references. But the first time she sits down at the weekend, you know, to try and create her model, she doesn't know what to do. So she takes a piece of paper, you know, and she draws a horizontal line and says, oh, well, the product goes from, you know, the market to, you know, end of life. And I was thinking that's what the reader should really be doing. You know, the reader should take a piece of paper and draw that, and then think, okay, you know, I can understand that on the basis of what she's heard so far, you know, she can do that. And she can't do anything more than that. And I saw a danger that people would, you know, start looking further on in the book, you know, for diagrams. And when they did that, they would see the fifth or the sixth model that she comes up with. And in a way, you know, that would mean they didn't have to concentrate so much as they went through the book. And she comes up with her other models. So to me, that was part of the story about how, you know, someone who was doing research, how they develop a model, because they don't know, you know, to start with what it's going to be at the end. And they start off with something simple and they think it's the answer, but then they learn a little bit more from the interviews and they see it's not quite right. So the following week she comes back and she improves it a little bit. And each time she improves it, every weekend, I think it is, you know, it gradually grows as a result of what, you know, that people have been saying to her. And I wanted the readers to have that experience of actually living through that and, you know, hoping that they would draw something, you know, to see what the picture looked like, rather than just looking to the back of the book to see what she comes up with.
That's actually rather brilliant. Kudos. Because you're right. It's so tempting to just, you know, Google it or go to the last page and like pull out the example and be like, oh, okay, I see what she's doing. Yeah, got it. Visual, we're done. You're right. I had not even considered the critical thinking nature of not having a picture to go by.
Oh, okay. No. Now, on a similar issue, I've had people asking me why I didn't put in the organization charts of the company. And again, the thinking was a little bit the same, you know, the reader can take a piece of paper, you know, and draw the organization chart. You know, it's a minute's work or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But then that helps to involve them more into the story. You know, they can think they're Jane as they're going along.
That's beautiful. Taking it and making it a tactile experience as well.
Oh.
Jane did an amazing job, especially for such a short time. How is she going to continue with that? I really love the idea with the workshop that they had at the end, like the last 3 weeks, I think. I just want to see how they're going to continue from there. What kind of changes they would start, or how they're going to initiate the change. I think that would be quite interesting to see.
How do we get the project off the ground, and where do we start, and how would he describe the good way of, you know, doing the change management, the communication, all the fights that are going on? I think that could for sure be interesting to see the sequel.
You know, I have to ask right up front, is there going to be a Products 2020? Will there be a sequel?
Well, I think there could be a sequel, but it depends a lot if people like Products 2019. You know, there needs to be a market for it.
Yep, absolutely.
No, I think if enough people are interested in knowing what happened next, then it makes sense to write, you know, Products 20, Products 2021 or whatever it would be. Because I think the next one to do would logically be some kind of a project, you know, how they continue with the project, but without actually getting into the implementation, you know, and then the implementation can come in the third book.
Interesting. I like that approach. And I think, you know, doing it in the novel format also gives you a bit more creative license than maybe you took the first time around, with being super precise and wanting to make sure that, you know, the details were very accurate and whatnot. But once you start to get into that, you know, futures and whatnot, then it's, we really could do anything we want. What would we do if we could do? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today about Products 2019 or just product lifecycle management in general?
No, you know, I've really enjoyed, you know, being part of your book club and hearing, you know, all of the feedback. It's been very rewarding for me. And I'm really very grateful that you invited me. Thank you for your invitation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. And to all of our viewers, if you like this content, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to never miss another episode. Have a question that you'd like to see answered? Shoot us an email at jmo@minerva-plm.com or just drop your comments below. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.